Hi everyone, welcome back to we've been off I think just over a month now, but we're back at HubSpot Hacks, and I know that lots of people are enjoying inbound at the moment and are there, but hopefully as many people can join us and get some insight on the new things we're looking at. Today we'll be having John will be joining us, and John will introduce himself in a few minutes. But the story with John, I don't know if anyone saw Yoni's post already, is very interesting because John has been, just like all of you guys, actually listening into the HubSpot hacks and reached out to us, and we started a conversation. And the interesting insights in the way that he's working with HubSpot is a good enough reason to have him on and to explain to us exactly what he's been doing with HubSpot and how he's been using it for the company that he's been working with. So, John, thank you for joining us.
Sure.
Let's hear what if you can introduce yourself, and then we can start the conversation.
Sure. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. It's always enjoy sharing knowledge that can be distributed freely, right? I work for the Scope Group, based in Frankfurt, in Germany. Scope Group itself is headquartered in Berlin and is Scope Ratings, which is a part of the Scope Group, is the leading European credit rating agency. We offer international clients independent, opinion-driven, forward-looking, and non-mechanistic credit risk analysis. And we place emphasis. We're a European agency, which means really we capture what makes countries unique. You know, we recognize local, social, legal, and political differences. We rate around 23 trillion euro in European debt instruments. I've been with Scope for about 7 years. I've been in this role as Mr. HubSpot for the company for a bit over 2 years. Some may have seen me over on the Sprocketier Discord as well. That's a place I do tend to hang out. One of the things that's been a red thread through my career is automation. And this has been true for the last 25, 30 years. I'm not a spring chicken anymore. Automation for me is liberation. It's freeing yourself from the mundane so you can do the fun stuff. So I've always looked at it in a very positive way. And you know, it's always a huge contribution to the bottom line in terms of productivity. One thing that I'm going to show you here is anything you see here is from our sandbox in HubSpot. And it's not a production version because that compliance would have a fit. That would get me in a lot of trouble, but that's par for the job. So anything you see here is really a sandbox version just for you guys. So if we go,
Sounds good.
so we go down to the next one. So the idea is a creative reorientation of HubSpot assets. And you know, it's sort of like many people view these CRM programs, you know, huge, intimidating, a lot to learn out of the box. But once you've become comfortable with using these programs, you really need to think about how to repurpose it because it's a tool, right? And you need to get comfortable and know your tools of the trade, and also repurpose tools to do things you want to do, and not limit yourself with how someone else thinks how you should do them. So key to the whole process of automation and of repurposing a tool for another purpose is really know your own processes and also know where you have critical problems, what is stopping them from moving smoothly. Because I've never worked at a company where all processes work smoothly. There's always an issue here, an issue there. It's always an iterative process, getting it better and better. Companies run into problems when they, for instance, stop being critical and just say, oh, we've always done it this way, so let's continue to do it this way.
So what you're saying is that one is whatever system you're using in this case, HubSpot.
Mhm.
The first thing is to understand your business processes and then
Yeah,
go through those different processes, trying to understand maybe
exactly.
where there are leaks in the process, where there are issues with the process. The other thing that I would add, which I think is important, especially using HubSpot today, is that even though HubSpot has hubs like Marketing Hub, Sales Hub, and Service Hub, they're being sold that way so they can, in different departments use them.
Mhm.
But for example, automation, I think this is where you're going, and we're going to, go in and show what you're going to be showing in a few minutes. But
Mhm.
I think another way of looking at it is to think of, okay, we have automation, whether it's from sales, from service, or from marketing. How
Mhm.
do I use it across the board? And how do I use the tools across the board for, especially if I'm on the RevOps team, for all of the teams, and not say,
Yeah.
okay, marketing is only for nurturing to send out emails. So because you have the tool, it's there, the automation is there, or any of the other tools there, and how to, as you're going to go in and say to repurpose. But even that way of thinking, which is I think progressed over time, especially using
Mhm.
HubSpot, is important because then you can get much more out of the tool than just the
That's a
box.
great point, because the really unique thing about HubSpot, which is what makes it such a great system, is that it is integrated. You don't have to, do webhooks and all sorts of jumping through hoops to get two things to talk to each other, but it's straightforward and simple. And this automation showing here would be impossible with many other CRMs, simply because these things aren't integrated the way that HubSpot integrates them. The case study I want to just show here is case study for subscription renewals. We want to keep track of when subscriptions come back up. We want to update them. We want to have call to action points. We need to automate to get the salespeople motivated. Oh, I need to talk to someone, talk to a client about possible upsell, an upgrade to their subscription. Or I want to extend it. Maybe I want to make a special offer and put it on, and I'm going to give you a better price for if you go for 3 years instead of just one. I also want to automate if my sales guys don't do anything, right? If they're just, they get the task and they don't do something, I want to be able to follow up on that. And one critical point, the sort of the core of this, is an automatic aging of subscription dates. In other words, keeping track of time. HubSpot doesn't have a now function. This is something I've been pleading with them for a couple of years. But we can use a different approach to get that sort of a date. And it's fairly straightforward. You need a custom property, which is the subscription countdown counter, I'm calling it, and you need a couple of workflows. So let me just, no, there we go. So the custom property itself, it's just going to be an integer number. It's a very straightforward, simple one, but we're going to use it to iterate through the process. So this is the first thing you need, is a subscription countdown counter, because this will drive everything else. Now, I say create your own repurposed pipeline. And what am I talking about here? Let me exit full screen here. And this is, the sort of the service hub ticket that you see. And you see here the standard support pipeline, open, waiting on contact, waiting on us, close. That's a very simplified and default setup. What I did was to repurpose it and go for subscriptions. And what you see here is a more complex pipeline, and you can see it's fading from left to right. Go into the steps themselves. Go down to where is it? Yeah, tickets. Sorry, I want to go. Sorry, I'm getting lost right here. I want to, I start over here, recent renewed. In queue, 120, 90 to 60, 60, 30, under 30 days. If I go here then to further down, you can see the closer I get to my due date, the finer the granularity, because I want people to be doing things. And if it's overdue, or if I have a special offer in, or the subscription has been renewed, or I've lost the subscription. These are all stages. Now, you can perhaps see I'm a big fan of Jira. We use Jira a lot here at Scope. And I'm really trying to, this darn thing is hiding my, up here.
So this kicks off when a subscription starts. So if I become a customer and they sign up as a subscription, then they get
Yeah.
added to that pipeline.
Yeah, well, I've got this thing blocking my top of my screen. This is, let me just
You just
drop
make
this
this
down.
that one
Yeah,
smaller.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, here we go. Yeah, this is, you don't need to kick it off manually. Use a trigger. And what we're doing here is we are creating a ticket automatically when a deal is moved to closed won. In this case, it's a theoretical pipeline. And you see in the first step, we create a ticket and assign it to the deal owner. And the second step, we set the ticket countdown counter that I created beforehand. We set that to 365. It's an annual subscription. If you have quarterly subscriptions or, whatever the frequency is, change that, adapt and make it work for you. Then where the magic happens is more here. And let me just go here. So I'm going to go through this a little bit slower just so that we can understand what's going on here.
Yeah.
This is a ticket that, first of all, the ticket, the workflow is set up to re-enroll, right? Because otherwise people would enter it once, never change. So you need to re-enroll. The second is if the ticket countdown counter is known and the deal here, for instance, in this case would be investor outreach, then it proceeds. It waits a day and decreases the ticket property by one. So that 365 after a day becomes 364. Next day, et cetera, et cetera. So it increments down. And then we have here a more complex system where you see there's a bunch of if statements, which basically breaks it down into that criteria by which you want to distribute. Do you say 150 days? Anything that's longer than 150 days, I'm not interested in.
So you're putting it back into those blocks that you showed us before, into those
Exactly.
stages.
Exactly. It'll move
Instead of doing one by one,
stages.
rather I put them into the stage they can stay there until they move to the next stage.
Yeah, because then I have a visual representation of where things are. If I have a block of, 80 tickets that are coming due in 30 days, I need to make sure I've got my people. It's a great tool for managing your personnel. Anyway, but going back here, so it ages it slowly, and 90, 60 days, and it keeps on going down 1 week, 3 days, tomorrow, today, overdue, because the ticket, you keep on decrementing the ticket, it goes negative at some point. And then I've got two states here for, was it renewed or was it lost? And okay, close this here. And let's start taking a look at what happens. So at 150, 20 days, the ticket, I put it into that stage of the pipeline, the ticket pipeline.
Got it.
Gets moved along as time goes by. And this right now, this up to 60 days is purely informative. But then 60 days in advance, I say, look, create, you're a salesperson, the person who created the deal, who won the deal. He's the ticket owner. He needs to start following up. So he gets a task assigned to him. And just simple, hey, this is coming up. Think about it. After 30 days, it says, heads up, it's coming, right? Time to review the subscription and its terms, as well as contacts you've had with them. Think about what you can upsell. Simple message, but very effective when it's given to the salespeople at the right time. So again, moving down through, we do some more, we say here, again, ticket owner. You've got 2 weeks now, And please put this on your agenda, discuss it with your line manager so he's informed. This is managing how your salespeople will spend their time or should be spending their time.
And then this is also standardized where you're giving everyone the
Yes,
exact same message.
exact same message.
And if you tweak it, then you'll tweak it going forward for everyone.
Exactly.
And you can update it if things change, but it's the same process for everyone. So it's also standardized.
Yeah. And here, when I'm here down 1 week, a week before, I need to be active, proactive. I need to be able to say, look, here's the setup. I need to set up a meeting with the client to talk to him. Maybe I should be prepared for an upsell. I should be prepared for problems that he may have. These are things that I should know before heading into that meeting. And also, management gets an email saying this is coming up in 1 week. Okay, so that if someone's not in for that week or whatever, if there's a gap, then management knows and can proceed appropriapritely. So then 3 days beforehand.
That was my next question. Actually, is how do you do the oversight to see that they're not missing anything?
Yeah. Well, here I'm sending an email. You could also use a static list that the manager needs to have up on his desktop, right, to see what's going on. And if something pops up on that list, then it's the manager has an overview of what's going on. I mean, there are multiple ways of handling this. In this case, email. 3 days beforehand, again, email to the manager and to the ticket owner. Are you guys prepared? The day before, you've got a task, gather up everything you need, and here it says assigned to no one. It needs to be assigned to ticket owner. And on the day, you say create a task for yourself. Update the renewal status. Did we renew it? Did we lose it? Did we win it? And this is where this comes in. If, well, here's overdue, I wait 3 days because sometimes, a decision may have to be made elsewhere. And so it takes a couple of days. But, here's a little bit of freedom, here where you can say, okay, this needs to be processed. If it's renewed, then I reset the ticket counter to 365 or 90 if it's quarterly subscription, which moves it back to the head of the queue. So automating as much as possible. Then here, if I lose it, I add it to the lost subscriptions. And that's something, for to discuss, with managers, et cetera. Why did we lose it? Again, settings here, the important thing is, oh, that's the wrong place. Hold on. Here under review and publish is, again, re-enrollment. This has to be re-enrollment set. And that's then we're all good. So that is sort of the brief overview.
I have a question.
Sure.
Once I just on a business level now and how it works out. So I've gone through that process and I got to the goal of renewing. I'm renewing.
Yeah.
Is that a new deal in your deal pipeline, or
it depends? I mean,
how
for
do you
us,
guys manage
it depends.
That's a question I get a lot.
Yeah. If it depends how you set up the deal fundamentally. If you set up the deal to have as a line item, say an initial sale and then renewals for every year, then there's no new deal. But if you've set up your deal such that it's just one product, a subscription.
Subscription, let's say for 36, for 12 months
days.
or 365 days. And then
it depends really how
you're counting the revenue, you say.
Exactly. I mean, you can set it up with a line item that is a recurring item, and then it's not a new deal. Or you set it up if you only have annual subscriptions and there's it's a one-off revenue, then you have to create a new deal. But that's why you set it up as a recurring revenue item as a line item in the deal itself. And then you don't need to create a new deal at all.
Okay,
Unless,
got it.
and the only problem is remembering to mark the deal closed lost after you've lost it, after if the subscription hasn't been renewed. But
Yeah,
that's a manual task.
because
Maybe it
we
could be
also have,
automated. Yeah.
we can automate that, and what I've also seen is having in parallel to this process, which I like a lot, using the ticket pipeline as a process, so
Yeah.
it doesn't
Yeah.
mess up with my deals. But having a renewal pipeline, which I've seen some of my customers, they have like their first time sales pipeline, and then they have a renewal pipeline, which in parallel would kick off when the renewal starts, and then they close it. And when it becomes closed won, it's closed won. When it becomes closed lost, it's churn.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then they could manage the churn and see, okay, hang on a second. But that's also, I think if it's annual subscription, as you said, it depends how to do that and manage the.
Exactly.
Okay, it's very
So
interesting.
yeah, and the key thing here is HubSpot gives us enormous flexibility and integration. We're not leaving HubSpot to do this. This is all within HubSpot. So we have all the tools, all the reporting that we need. And the key thing is to create your own ticket system, right? Think about what are the steps? What are your processes, right? Map that out step by step, preferably in extreme detail, because then you can exercise greater control over the granularity. If you just have 2 or 3 steps, then there's always a lot going on between those steps. And you don't necessarily want to micromanage people, but you do want to you want to have high, great deal of granularity on your information. This is where you can avoid, having daily calls with your team and saying, where are we? Where are we? Where are we? And this information is now in this ticket pipeline. So for some of the steps, the entry and exit is controlled by workflows. You just saw that, how, if it's at the certain age, it gets moved into a different step. You can also use these, of course, to trigger an action. If it goes into this stage, that can trigger another action. And as you saw, when successful, we go back to the beginning. So it's if you have subscriptions which are running over multi-years, there's very little work involved. It just keeps on rotating and rotating. And important thing here is what you've brought up as well. It's not really to track renewal revenues. It's to track the renewal process.
That's the process. It's using this pipeline, which is a pipeline that if you have the service hub, we can use it with the deals if we have that, but that's a bit more of a challenge but you can use those pipelines and you can use that as all kinds of processes. Another thing that I saw a week ago, or I think it was last week, is the need for example, a POC process. So you start a sales process, it gets the POC, and then what the company wanted to do is to manage that POC process, which is a proper process, which lots of people involved. Most of them are not the sales team at all. It's the people that actually go in and get the work done. If that becomes, if it's successful, then it goes back to the sales pipeline and they get to the next stage. But they wanted to manage that. They wanted to follow that. They wanted to see how long. They wanted to see if there were any hiccups. They wanted to see required fields. They wanted all of that stuff, but not manage it inside proper sales pipeline because it's not part of the sales pipeline. So I could, any process, an onboarding process, any process that I feel that I need to manage inside, I can use this, whether it's service, in this case, Service Hub helps you a lot. Even though it's a ticket, you say, take this as a way of looking at a business process, and you can use the automation, the alerts, the back and forth, and get the different teams involved, tasks, everything that HubSpot gives you to manage and to be able to make those processes efficient and then report back.
Yeah, and what's also nice is if you have such a process like you just described, where you've got people actually going out getting something done, right? That's when they move those stage. They have a different stage. They move the stages themselves, and you then can get a picture of what's the dwell time. Do I have a bottleneck someplace? If I've got 6 or 7 step process of getting from point A to point B, And I'm finding I'm never making a deadline. We can use, if people are using this properly, you can find out where the bottleneck is and see what's the problem with the dwell time, and either change the process because you can't change the dwell time, or find out, invest perhaps whatever to remove that dwell time. So
Yeah.
and here, the process, what I really thought of is where to start, and it's when the deal is closed, closed won. And because the revenues recur for us as a subscription rather than an annual renewal. The revenues are booked elsewhere. This is really for the salespeople to manage the process of the renewal itself. Important is, automatic creation of the ticket. So they enter the process automatically. It automatically ages as time goes on. So you don't have to, think, oh, you don't have to look at a calendar and say, oh, when, etc. It's all done by the system. And you use key points in to trigger actions. So when do you want your salespeople to do something? Do you want them to do something 30 days out, 3 days out overdue? And again, when it closes, you've won the subscription, you kept the subscription, bang, back to the beginning.
So you tie in between the stages, how you divide it to the actions and triggers that you need. It's not
Exactly.
random. It's like,
Exactly.
okay, let me think about it. 3 days before they should be doing this. So now I need to measure that as 3 days. 6 months
Exactly.
period is an important period because we need to get, I don't know, management involved to know that it's coming through and so on. Got
Yeah.
it. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's how you define those stages.
And when I first started looking at how to show this to you, because you're not seeing what we're doing internally, because like I said, I work in a regulated business, and that would not make compliance happy. But we have a first workflow to create the ticket, then a second workflow to decrement. Well, I put those two together, right? And a third workflow waits and watches to trigger actions. A fourth workflow reacts to if something is moved. Or you could put it all into one workflow. It really depends on how you want to manage this and how confident you feel in putting the workflows together. I mean, workflows in HubSpot do require some logical thinking and understanding the limits of what you can do in the workflows, but they can be broken down very granularly, or once you've got a series of workflows working, consolidate them. It makes managing the workflows much easier. So again, sort of, this is a pipeline repursing. Be creative, I say. A lot of people say, oh, you run a CRM. How That's not creative. You're just, dealing with data and associations. And no, you can be really creative. Let your processes fuel your imagination, right? Because when you're working with the systems and running through the processes, it's always an issue of, is it working smoothly? Is there friction, as HubSpot likes to call it? So map out your processes. Here, how you want your people to manage renewals or any other process. Break it down into as many steps as appropriate or useful. This is where you can be really creative, and your own needs, of course, come into play. You may have reporting requirements, or you may want to have highly granular control over what's going on. Management may want to see exactly, they want to get 3 emails a day because they want to be informed. It's what's nice here, there's only one custom property. Custom properties are great. There's a tendency to create one for every small use.
Yeah.
Here, I try to be very, very fastidious and just have one single custom property to handle that. If someone is thinking, well, I don't need this, I don't have processes, we just get work done. No, you do have processes, you just don't know them. And this is something I've run into a number of times in my career. People saying, oh, we just do it this way. And it's like, yeah, that's a process. It's not documented. We can document it. If you can document the process, then you can do milestones. And if you can do milestones, you can do metrics. And if you can do metrics, you can do productivity analysis. And that is where people make money, by increasing their productivity. with the same tools, the same people, and it's an opportunity to bring order from chaos.
I think also something that's really important before we go forward is one is, as you said, to document it. Two, and it depends on how people manage, but for me and for I think most of our team, use Miro or something else to visualize that process, because then you can map out everything, because you can map out everything you had in the last slide of these are the stages, these are the alerts that need to go out, and make out this visual mapping. That's very important. There is, I think that, and then for me also, I'm finding over time that visual mapping is so important, because a lot of the time you don't know why you decided or what you decided a year ago, and then when you go to relook at it's you can go into the workflow, but you and the workflow know how you created it. The rest of the team doesn't really.
Right.
So it's very hard to have that conversation there. You have to go back to the map, show it to them, and say, this is what we decided at the end of 2022. Things have changed. We have new people, we have new processes. Now let's tweak it and then build a new version and then go in and update it.
Yeah.
There's a question here. I think actually maybe let's try if we can answer before we go forward.
Sure.
From Justin, he's asking, what would you use as a re-enrollment trigger if the subscription renewal isn't managed as a new deal?
So isn't managed as a new deal? Well, you don't. Oh, you mean
so your trigger is not a new deal. The subscription is just
then
the subscription renewal happens.
Yeah, sure. If you've got an existing group of subscriptions, if you've got 40 or 50 new subscriptions, put them into a static list and add them to the workflow that way.
So you add okay. So you
can add
manually, or you automated adding them to the list, and then or take them off from the list.
Or you can use that list as a trigger.
Yeah.
Alternatively, you can say if in the trigger itself, is it a member of this list or has it been closed won? Both are then contained.
Got it.
So you can pull in the existing ones.
Excellent.
So now,
thank you.
To sort of sum up what to automate, and it sort of should be somewhat banal, but it's something I find a lot of people tend to, you have a job, you're doing stuff in your job, and it's the stuff that, someone told you, this is how we do it, but you need to automate call to actions that are repetitive and tedious, right? These are the ones that you sit down and say, yeah, okay, I got to get XYZ done today. That means I'm going to open up a Word document, fill something out, do this, that, this, and that, save it, and send it to someone. Well, that's just dying to be automated as much as you can. It also means by automation, you can ensure that internal steps, your parts of your processes don't get skipped, they aren't ignored. If you need to have a check with management that this price is okay, and the guy wants to close the deal, sales guy wants to just close the deal, and he closes it, and management says, I didn't approve this, 6 weeks down the road, and yeah, boss, I just need it. Sorry, I forgot, and that's a loss of revenue. It makes sure that processes are followed scrupulously. In other words, if it's automated, it can't be easily changed. Also, if you have some churn in your personnel, that means if one of my sales guys leaves and he's got 47 deals in his pipeline, or that he's got 47 closed deals with subscriptions, I just reassign those deals and all is good. So it's a very simple way of managing. You don't have to, gather all the information, who's doing what. You can see, oh, Joe was doing this, had these 47 deals. Mark is taking over that. I assign all those deals to Mark. End of story. It reduces your management overhead. If you have the need for, knowing exactly what's going on, put it in automation, put it in a workflow, instead of having daily calls and spending time listening to what other people are doing. If you can just get this information directly, because you can put into reporting. You don't have to, go into a workflow or look at a list. You can create reporting. Management gets a single report every day. They see exactly where things are, automated. You reduce training overhead because you can explain how things are automated and people can see how things are going to be done. And they don't have, there's no choice, there's no training involved of, oh, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. It's automated, it's done. They just get the results. Now, sometimes, and this is unfortunately a weakness on the tickets pipeline, you can't kick off a sequence, but you can kick off equivalent of a sequence by internal emails, waiting 3 days, another internal email. So you can get the same functionality of a sequence of making sure things are followed up, making sure that things can be escalated if they need to be. If there's been 3 days or 5 days and no one's responded, then it needs brought up to management that there's a bottleneck here, and that's better than hoping that someone remembers that they're doing something, that they need to do something.
Yeah, and the workflows you
Yeah,
can send out all those different alerts, and I think SMS
exactly.
is going to be added at least for the US coming forward, I think in the next day or so as well.
Yeah,
There's a
yeah,
few other things that are interesting. Okay.
yeah.
I just have
And
I have one
sure.
question before you jump to this
Yeah.
one. Going through this now with you, I think one of the questions people are having is one is to automate as the maximum as possible for all the reasons. But I am seeing an over automation slash
Oh, yes.
usage of pipeline. So what I've seen over time, especially if they don't have the service hub, which is a bit of a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So they say, okay, well, we have a huge amount. So let me go back one step. The way I look at it, the way we look at it in the team here, is that when you create a proper sales pipeline,
Mm-hmm.
you do it based on the actions of how the person or the actual customer becomes a customer. The steps that they need to go through, and the steps that you need to walk them through, and not the process steps that you need to go through.
Mm-hmm.
What do I mean by that? So, for example, I'm seeing a lot of contract sent. Why do I need it? Now, internally, it's important to know that that contract was sent. But that's not really a stage in the pipeline. Contract accepted is a stage, because I know the contract went out and he confirmed that he received it. Because if I just sent out the contract, we can sit for now for 3 months, and
Sure.
it turns out he never got it, and it's stuck
Yeah.
there on that stage. So what I'm seeing is that because the deal pipeline has the ability to see how much time between stages,
Yep.
companies, when they're building it out themselves a lot of the time, which makes sense, it's very easy to build, are going in one direction, or either having not enough, or they're creating this very, very, very long pipeline with all of the processes, including all the internal processes, that what you're suggesting is let's take those out and put them on another pipeline, like the POC or any internal processes. And then they're saying, hang on, I can't manage this because there are too many processes. And then what I'm seeing in some of the companies over time is they're dividing it into 3 pipelines, which I wouldn't do either. What's happening is they have a first pipeline, which is the first section. They finish that pipeline, they physically move it over to the next pipeline in the deal pipeline. They're not using the sales. And then then they move it to the third pipeline. What happens is that kills your forecasting and it kills your reporting, because you have a deal that existed in pipeline 1 that now has disappeared from pipeline 1, it's moved to pipeline 2.
Correct.
So my suggestion, based on what you're saying, is perfect. If you have Service Hub, then obviously it's a no-brainer. Use the ticketing for those internal processes, so that you can define your sales process the way it should be, which is a combination between both sides. All internal processes move to repurposing like you're suggesting. If you don't, you can also use the deal pipeline if you haven't got a choice. And you just don't use that one for forecasting, because you can create up to 15. And then you keep everything, your forecasting in one place, your processes separate, and you don't start going into these whirlwinds of things are not working, the forecasting is not working, the amount's not working, nothing's working, my AR, and so on. So that's just another.
That's a great point, because exactly, if you start breaking this into multiple sales pipelines, you lose a lot of information. You can't report on them. That's a really great point. We use Jira. At some point we leave HubSpot because
Oh,
HubSpot at
project
the end of the day,
management is not a project
it's not a
management.
project management. We have our ANOps and operational side. That's the point where for us, we're out of HubSpot. That's where the revenue's been reported, the forecast has been met, or we have that reporting ability there. On the other side, when we're out of HubSpot and we're into Jira, that's when metrics are measured. We can say, how long does the work need to how long is the work taking? Where's our bottleneck here? Where's our bottleneck there? And yeah, you can't do it all in HubSpot as much as perhaps we'd love to.
Yeah.
But
But
finishing up,
you can push the stages back because the
yeah,
ticketing and Jira also speak to each other, the
yes,
integration. So
yeah.
you can say, I'm going to do the actual external developing process, for example, outside or whatever it is, and
Well,
then I move the stage and then push it back.
we use the server version of Jira, which does not play well with others. So
Got
it's
it.
not quite so easy. We're spending a lot of IT energy on that, but it's going quite well now. What I really want to sum up here is, map out your processes, discuss with people who are out, because what management thinks may be a process and how things actually work may be two very different things. And it needs to be one thing if it's going to work. So discuss with key team members to verify that the processes are actually the ones that are being used. Design your repurpose pipeline to match that. Create whatever custom properties you may need. I really argue as few as possible. Design your tickets, write your workflows, test it, first of all, with dummies, turn it then on, monitor how it's going, and that's when you can start documenting the progress, the metrics, and see where is there room for improvement. I may need to change my processes. I may need to provide somebody with a greater incentive to get stuff done on time, right? Or I may need to add resources to match the churn that or not churn, but to remove the friction that I have otherwise. And at the end of the day, enjoy your success, because that's what it's all about, is increasing productivity, and that should have a positive impact on your bottom line at the end of the day. And that's one of the great things. We didn't start off with the Service Hub in our contract. We moved into it about a year ago, and it's been fabulous. Don't
That's
regret
amazing.
it at any point, because this allows us to have so much more automation and increased productivity.
And I'm assuming that you would suggest that, especially if I have a working, production portal, I would build this in the sandbox, just like you're showing us now, test it out, think of all the use cases that could go wrong, what it's affecting, especially if they're running workflows. I think that's a lot of things. Today with the sandbox, you can just say, okay, I'm going to completely copy over everything that exists today and then start from there to take into account. Because I think one of the things with the automation you need to be careful of when you make changes, or what are the effects on other things. So if I'm doing one automated thing, is it going to suddenly trigger any workflows or any other things that I didn't take into account?
Or am I going to create a chaos behind the scenes because I'm overriding values in other properties? These are all things that have to be carefully worked out. I mean, it's a powerful tool that can go very badly wrong, and you need to have either someone like yourself to help people with, or to have in-house resources to do that.
Yeah. And play around in the sandbox, because then you'll probably see it's good to break things, but do it in the sandbox, and then you can see what the issues are. Okay, so I have a few questions. I can see what else is coming through. But I think everything you said is very interesting. Is how to repurpose these tools, how to look at them. One thing that I think that also can be of interest is as you said, one is a documentation, but also my question is, how do you get the relevant people on board? is it starting with, as you said, with the design and the mapping and the need? Like, how do I even start with a need? How do I actually go internally to my company and say, guys, we can improve this process? Does everyone, because a lot of the time you might see the need or someone else, but they say, well, you know what, we don't even know there's a pain point. I mean, obviously everything's broken and nothing's working. That's an easier way. But for me to go in and improve a process, I need to find the right people. I need to sell the idea to them. I need to show them what the end goal is, what the success looks like. So is that something that you would also start that as like a basic brief, say, guys, listen, we can probably improve this process. Let's take a look at it, map it. And the outcome of this is, I need X amount of resources to get this done.
Yeah.
But in the end, you'll see, how do you suggest to go around that based on your experience?
Well, on my experience, in this case, I've always been internal, right? That's the first thing. Second, I saw people doing repetitious, boring things, mundane things, time and time again. I'm not going to name companies. The company I work for in Basel, watching people spend a couple of weeks formatting stuff in Word to get a document out, a bunch of numbers in a table. And it was like,
no, I'm asking
oh,
internally because internally is even harder to sell than external.
Well, I said, wait a sec, we can do this with a macro, and do this in Excel with a macro, automate. And the reaction was, really? We can do that? Now, in other cases, it's, you run into someone saying, look, this is the way we do things. I don't want things to change because I think you want to, automate me out of a job. And that, of course, is a more difficult thing to deal with. But my argument has always been, we're not automating you out of a job. We're creating space for you to do other things, because your role in the company remains. It's not like we can press a button and we don't need you anymore. But much rather, you can take control over the processes rather than the process running you. And that sells. My experience has been that sells. And we've had tremendous productivity. I mean, I've been part of tremendous productivity increases in the past, where another job, 7 people working 6 weeks was reduced to 4 hours.
Yeah, especially with the whole world going AI, and that's something that probably more people are worried about. But I think it even makes more sense because now you can't really fight it. That's the way, the technology is going. But it also allows allows people to focus on much more important things. And I think people are interested in that. I think one of the things, as you said, maybe in the sandbox to build things and then actually go and show it is another way of getting people convinced as well, because a lot of the time they maybe not worried about job security, but they're worried about the data. There's like, okay, I don't have control over the data now because you're going to be automating things and you're going to be suddenly sending out alerts and you're going to be suddenly, driving the sales team or the service team crazy and so on and so forth.
Well, it's also where you need,
as you said.
Yeah, you also need to negotiate. I mean, part of a good functioning company with with marketing and sales, you need to have a sort of a contract between the two, of marketing saying, we'll help you get the leads, and sales saying, we'll take those leads and create deals and earn the company money. It's something that HubSpot recommends in its sales certification process, and I'm a fan, because you get people talking to each other, get people working with each other, and then if you're all pulling on the same piece of string, so to speak, you're going to be able to achieve great things.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
Yoni, Perry, are there any other questions that have come through, or do you guys have any questions that I haven't seen? I'm clicking here in the chat. Okay, I think we can. I mean, we've got another 10 minutes, but we can cut this. I do want to add 2 more things before we go. One is thank you to NetApp here in Tel Aviv for allowing me to run this webinar from their webinar room. That's number one. And number two, it's a good idea for everyone to go onto YouTube in the next couple of hours and see all of the new features that are going to be presented in Inbound. If whoever doesn't know, I'm assuming everyone on this call does know, Inbound is starting in a couple of hours, and the keynotes, or I think there's a link there and everyone can actually watch them live.
Mhm.
So my suggestion is to everyone spend a few hours going in. As a partner, we've seen a lot of stuff that's going to be already coming out in the next couple of hours. And even though I've been working personally with HubSpot since 2013-14, I'm really excited. I think there are very interesting things coming out, things that actually, some of them are going to change the way you actually manage processes, apropos processes we could be talking. I think that's the most important, how to actually manage sales, marketing, and customer success. So I suggest everyone taking a look at that. We'll be running another webinar in 2 weeks' time, obviously, for HubSpot Hacks, but we'll be running a special one next week, this time, which we will be summarizing all the new features that we think are really relevant to deep dive in. Some of them are better, some of them are going to be live already, and we'll put those together and present them in exactly 7 days' time, this time next week. So that should also be interesting. And that's it. So hopefully we'll see a lot of you next week and then the week after that. John, thank you very much for this. This is really interesting. I think this is as I said before in our conversation last week, the most important thing is kind of a mind switch on how to take control of it, how to use the tool, as you said, how to plan, how to see how we can improve it. And it doesn't really have to be customized in the sense that I need to create code and change things around. I'd rather think creatively and say, okay, how do I customize and use the CRM for my benefit, for my specific business processes, which are very unique for every single customer and every single company. And but the tools can be used in different ways. I think that's excellent what we've seen today.